keep in mind, we do have until the end of the week to close this candle, and we only have to get above around 25.4 almost, to get above all of these. But having a look right here, this is a classic. You've probably seen this. People, this photo is like all over Twitter. I don't know who took this picture, but it's the classic bump and run. And, you could see, we basically have that exact thing, right? We have this here, then we have that massive crash to the downside, which you could see, same thing right here. And, then what do? We come up here, we retest it once, we retest it twice.
This weekend is getting crazier for Bitcoin as time goes by, as it is destroying every resistance getting in the way. Some experts say that's happening due to the recent banking events and fear becoming prominent in the traditional markets. Investors and big players want their money safe, and if traditional banks don't work anymore, now it seems crypto is the way to go. Yet, we at The Daily Crypto always check different perspectives on what's happening and never buy the hype. Instead, we look at fundamentals and charts to have the best chances to profit from all of this. In today's video, we will have an awesome interview with two different perspectives. One from Gareth Soloway, who's known for his bear predictions on Bitcoin, and the other crypto zombie, who's also amazing in technical analysis and has a channel with over 250,000 subscribers. Now, please bear in mind that by the moment we are publishing this video, Bitcoin already broke the higher highs again. But let's hear what their predictions and perspectives were yesterday and discuss them later. First, let's have a quick look at macro and S&P 500.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, first off, it was all a question of how long would it take for the Fed to come back into the system, right? And I guess we got our answer after all. So pretty wild to think about that. But let me just show you guys here. And again, I got a lot of screens here. Hopefully I'm showing the right one. But if we look at the chart here, we have the chart. No, you know what? That's not even the right chart. Bear with me, guys. I got to show the right one here.
No worries. Take your time. All the charts are crazy. I'm sure it's hard to follow up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, here we go. Here's the S&P chart. And so basically what we're seeing here is the Fed trying to come to the rescue in this situation. And I think the bottom line is that this is a factor of them raising rates so fast because they called it transitory, right? Transitory, we always heard about that. And then all of a sudden, we see them being wrong. They're then kind of catching up. They're playing catch up to the situation. And you can't jump rates from 0.25% to where they are now and not expect a breakage in the system, especially when you have all the issues going on in the underlying market. So if we look at the S&P, we've already seen this kind of wedge pattern break lower. We are rallying today. And again, the expectation is there's probably a little bit more upside. For me, the big question is when we get back to this trend line, does it get rejected? But even regardless of this 2 trillion, to me, it's the S&P is still going to go lower. Ultimately, we're headed to a recession in the second half. And I'm in the camp that that this is a big break point. I mean, it's actually a really positive thing for both gold as well as cryptocurrency. Anytime you have a breakage in the fiat banking system, it's going to push more people to consider something like a Bitcoin. So while I still don't think Bitcoin's bottom necessarily yet, I still think that the long term for Bitcoin is super, super rosy. Again, this is just one thing to keep in mind is that as a technician of the charts, there's just pivot points for me, right? So until we get above certain levels, I have to go with the ultimate trend of the markets and where things are going. Now, if we get above certain levels, then I start saying, okay, now this tells me there's likely further upside, maybe the bottom's in. We just haven't done that per the charts yet, at least from my analysis. But Listen, there's so many people that say the bottom's in that you can't discount that either. Absolutely.
We actually broke some of these levels today, according to Gareth's previous analysis, but there's way more into it. Please pay attention.
I actually agree with Gareth in the sense that we are still in a downtrend, so you can't quite say that the bulls are back in full force. And honestly, I am skeptical on the bottom calling because when we had that 17.5 level and then we consolidated, I honestly was convinced that was, and then we got the 15.5 anyway. Kind of threw everyone off guard. But I do have to say, there's a lot of confluence on the charts that I'm seeing previously historically that, we can get into later that I do think are giving a lot of signs that maybe everyone who did sell, sold. I mean, I can't really imagine with everything that's happened, all the collapses, the banks, the FTXs, the weak hands, the speculators. I just can't imagine there being really that much more money that would leave if you haven't left already. What is the next thing that would really scare someone? World War, something like, what could
out there. Like, from my thesis, I don't think it's necessarily going to be another FTX. For me, it's thinking the S&P has probably another 25-30% down. And then ultimately, if that happens, how does crypto hold up in that face? I don't think it's quite ready to stand on its own yet as not a risk asset. And so if we did drop, let's say 25% more on the S&P, can Bitcoin stay at 24,000, 25,000, or is it going to get pushed back down just in panic selling? But yeah, this is what makes the debate great, right? I mean, it's fantastic.
That's right.
We've never seen it yet, but you know, I feel like at some point, you know, with like the decoupling will happen at some point. I don't know what's gonna break the camel's back or whatever, but I do think
For sure,
it's coming.
dude.
Now Crypto Zombie will do his own analysis to the charts and explain how fundamentals and technical analysis explain what's happening and what's coming next.
Like, you'll meet people that will just be show me the charts, I'll tell you the news kind of people who just basically will be like, no, charts, just it's always in the charts predict everything, news is just fluff, it just explains why the charts do what they do. I believe that there is a mix of both. I do think that there are fundamental things that happen, you know, for example, USDC depegging or something like that, or the bank run. And I think that considering what happened and what we've seen with all these different banks, which by the way is a conspiracy for another day, all right, Operation Chokehold, right? Are they actually trying? Because think about it, like Bill was saying, imagine all this money flushing into cryptocurrency. Are they going to be happy with that? Are they going to be happy knowing that it's leaving the system going into crypto? So, you know, we'll talk about that for another day. But I think that considering everything that we've seen, everything that's happened, you know, it just really makes me even more bullish on crypto. So the way that I am trading it right now, yes, ultimately we are in that downtrend still, but I can kind of just show you some things real quick if you want to, if I could share the screen. So we were calling this the triple threat. Basically, this was the death cross on the weekly, and we also had this downward sloping support right here, and we also had this horizontal. And you could see that, you know, that was a very critical point where they all kind of intersected right here, and you could see we had that rejection off of it. But the fact that we got this beautiful bounce off of this right here shows me that there is definitely strength in the markets. Now, we did have like a worst case scenario where, I don't know, let's say we completely get rejected, Bitcoin falls down to here, and, you know, I don't know, maybe we consolidate and bore the hell out of everybody, you know, into midsummer. It's possible. It's possible. But I consider what we're seeing here a lot closer. And keep in mind, you know, we do have until the end of the week to close this candle, and we only have to get above around 25.4 almost, you know, to get above all of these. You know, but having a look right here, this is a classic. You've probably seen this. People, this photo is like all over Twitter. I don't know who took this picture, but it's the classic bump and run. And, you know, you could see, you know, we basically have that exact thing, right? We have this here, then we have that massive crash to the downside, which you could see, same thing right here. And, you know, then what do? We come up here, we retest it once, we retest it twice, and now we've bounced up. And even though we didn't, you know, close, we have put in a higher wick right here. So it is kind of showing me that this classic pattern could be playing out. You know, short term, you could see we're trying to pump up right now. And, you know, the fact that we were able to stay above this heart line and we're making that attempt again. I wanted to show you this. Now, this is pretty crazy. This is a, don't get scared, guys. This is like indicator city here. But I just want to show you the confluence that we're seeing right here. So you guys are probably familiar with this market cipher indicator down here. And you can see that when you get the green dot with the money flow flowing up, right? The red flowing up, and then you get that yellow VWAP with the RSI oversold, you could see that that basically has marked the bottom every single time. But to add on top of that, we also have the wave edge indicator, which I like to use also with this. And the interesting thing is, if we look at this bottom right here, the wave edge has only ever given 3 of these greens, which in a nutshell is basically just a perfect buy. And what you want to do is you want to see this wave move up into this wave in confluence with the market cipher, you know, also doing an anchor wave and a trigger wave, right? And that's literally what we're doing basically right now, or at least we're attempting to do it. We're very close, as in with the next few weeks. You can even see back here on the super guppy, and I hope I'm not going too quick for you guys. I just don't want to take up too much time. You know, look at this back here. Look at this super guppy, right? We're going into the neutral, and then, you know, halfway through we hit the red, which usually tends to mean we're very close to the end. And you can see we had 1, 2, 3 of these blues. Don't worry about them if they're just, you know, moving averages and stuff like that. But, you know, eventually, if you come over here, we're doing the exact same thing. I mean, this is basically this happening right here. So I understand there's a lot of narratives and things like that, and I get why people could be bearish right now. But, you know, and look at this right here. This is Bitcoin dominance. Look at Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance, we go back to April of, no, actually, we can go all the way back to July, and you can see that we've actually finally broken this downtrend. Look at that just going right there. People are jumping into Bitcoin. They're not really, you know, yeah, of course they're in the altcoins, but, you know, and right here, look at this, guys. So according to sentiment, Bitcoin whales were actually responsible for the majority of this move. So we're seeing big players buying tons of Bitcoin. And get this, guys, we saw 70,000 Bitcoin withdrawn into self-custody. Now think about this logically. If it's on an exchange, they're sending it to an exchange, it probably means they're looking to sell. If you're seeing whales buying at the highest level in 9 months and then taking it and having the highest levels of withdrawals in 6 months, putting them into self-custody, it's very difficult not to be bullish on Bitcoin. So the only thing that I am concerned about is we did get another CME futures gap down here. I don't know if we're going to close that one since it was a gap directly after a gap fill. But that's maybe down around 20,300. But, ultimately, guys, even if Bitcoin, I don't care, came all the way down here, as long as we keep this upward sloping trend, then I have to still maintain my bullish stance on Bitcoin. So that's basically how I'm trading right now.
We're probably going to close over that level, and next week, we will probably have an update on the narrative. As Bitcoin seems to breaking every level showing bullish force, did we finally hit the bottom? Or is this another fake rally happening because of the banking crisis?
When Russia invaded Ukraine, right, we saw this big spike in Bitcoin because everyone was trying, all the Russian oligarchs were trying to get into Bitcoin to avoid sanctions and get their money out.
Yep.
And then here we have the same thing happening again with the banking crisis. And then everyone's rushing into Bitcoin because at least Bitcoin isn't going to be touched by the government, or you're not going to lose your money. So what happens when that fear fades? Do we see that pullback? Does it kind of come back down? Because after the Russian situation, we know it did come back and make no new lows. So just playing devil's advocate there.
I was watching an interview with Andrew Ross Sarkin and Mike Novogratz, and Andrew was like, yeah, well, look what happened with USDC. If they didn't get a bailout, look what would happen to USDC. But it's funny how the media is trying to flip it again, but really, this was a bank. It wasn't crypto. Crypto works fine. Trust me. I'm sure everyone would love to just transact in USDC. The fact that they had to go through a bank, they had to have it back one-to-one with real physical cash in a bank, and had to have that money on hand for the swaps in and out. When they got the bank run, it wasn't USDC that had the issue. It was the banks themselves. And I think people are waking up and realizing that while everyone's been calling crypto and Bitcoin a scam all this time, the real scam is the banks. I slept like a baby when all these banks were collapsing. I slept great knowing that,
self-custody, right?
I was fine with it. I didn't bother me at all. Well, I guess, obviously it's kind of weird because the things that we're looking for, I think, are just going to play out anyway. We know that at some point there is going to be something that breaks, and you could argue that it's breaking right now. That is the banks, the situation, right?
Yep.
I don't know if you saw Michael Burry's tweet about the 1907 situation. Yep. Basically saying that, it's a very similar situation, even though some people say that was to create the Fed and control the money. But at the same point, they're going to have to do something. And, if, Powell, we're still seeing jobs go up. It's like, so obviously, it's not, I just find that we're not responding the way that we used to, maybe because we have the internet and we can Google things and we understand how the Fed works, and people are a lot smarter this time around. But I think we're going to have that Fed pivot. We're going to have that regulation. We're also going to have a complete lack of trust, because let's be honest, even what they're doing with this 2 trillion just shows everybody it's laughable. It's a joke. They don't know what they're doing. They throw darts at objects and hope for certain outcomes. I think just what is happening now is going to snowball into a potential for the super cycle. I don't know necessarily. I do still believe in diminishing returns, but if we do get the sovereign wealth funds, for example, from these other countries coming in, then we may have a super cycle in that sense. But I would think that after that, we would probably sort of mellow out. And then I think crypto would lose a lot of that volatility, because then you kind of have the majority, like gold, right? Everybody knows it's nothing new about it. So yeah, Fed pivot, regulation, lack of trust in banks. And like I said, get more of those sovereign funds in. And I think you could see a super cycle for sure.
Another question that came in is if this is the beginning of the super cycle for Bitcoin. Here's what Gareth and Crypto Zombie have to say.
That I do believe that there's going to be a gold super cycle. I'm not yet convinced that we're getting near the Bitcoin one, but no doubt. One of the things I love to show, and let me try to show quickly my chart here. Where is it? There we go. If you look at the pattern that gold has created over the last 5 years or so, from 2018, you had this up move, and then this has been all really bullish consolidation. In fact, you could connect the highs and the lows, and you have this perfect channel sideways to lower. And what I love showing people is go back to the 1970s, right? And that was kind of the last time we had this crazy action in inflation. And again, if you look at like what Larry Fink said yesterday about inflation staying high, I've said that for a while. It's easy to bring inflation down from 9 to 5%. It's hard to bring it down to the 2%. And that last little bit is always the hardest. I always say, like, it's easy to lose 10 pounds. It's hard to get the 6-pack at the end, right? That's like the hardest part to get. So really, if you look at the 1970s, you had the same move up. Like from now, we've seen 2018 to 2020 was an up move in gold. And here in the 1972 to 74 range, same thing. Then you had the consolidation, which is exactly what we've seen over the past few years in gold, that sideways to lower trend. And then look at the super cycle back then. I mean, this was just an incredible 9x on gold. I don't necessarily think we're going to do 9x. I think Bitcoin does take some of that with, some of the money that people would put in gold goes into Bitcoin. But to think about a 3-4x over the next 3 to 5 years, I think is very possible with gold. So I'm more in that camp where I think that super cycle is probably going to come in the commodity form.
Why not in Bitcoin?
Yeah, so it's not to say that there won't be. There's just things that have to happen first, right? So for me, I'm a big believer that you have to have big money going in, and I'm not just talking about some whales. I'm saying like for us to get a super cycle, we need regulation. It has to be the right regulation, which creates transparency, which then allows pension funds and hedge funds to feel confident that they're investing in things that they're not going to lose their people's money, right? I mean, there's this fiduciary responsibility. And I think also, one of the issues I'm struggling with, and I'd love to hear the other panelists' views, is that, if this is a bottom in crypto, it would be the first bottom in any bear market that I've ever experienced between commodities, currencies, and stocks, even Bitcoin in its previous cycles, where you never got all out like despair and people giving up on it, right? In 2009, the markets got crushed to a point where people literally didn't even open their 401ks. They wouldn't even look. They basically had to go back to work. They lost so much money, right? And the same thing if you look at oil went negative. I mean, this was absolute panic. To me, I still see so many people bullish on Twitter, like people that are just like, nope, the bull market's right here. We're going to be back at 69,000 in 6 months from now. And for me, I've never seen a bottom like that. So maybe there's always a first, right? But I just haven't seen it. And that's troublesome for me.
Crypto's also a lot smaller than like any of the other markets, really, when you think about it. So the way that I see it is and I don't want to use the term cult because some people will say that, but I remember my first bear market. I was devastated. I thought I had wasted like 2 years of my life, and I was questioning my decisions and all that. And then we had the next little dip again, the COVID crash, and it was like a little easier. I think it's just maybe it's just a certain kind of person that does crypto. We're just so used to getting beat down so much with such bad volatility and terrible price action that it's almost just like if it does go down, it's like buy the dip. So I know Gareth is looking for this like, I want to hear, everybody moving and not talking about it. But I will tell you personally, I had friends, family, relatives, people down the street asking me about crypto at the peak, even in the 30s. They're not calling me. I just went hiking with a guy the other day. He would always be picking my brain about Bitcoin and altcoins. He did not even bring it up once. So I think a lot of the noise and chatter have left. But as far as like going on Twitter and like finding a guy like me or like debate or any of this, like the OGs in the Bitcoin space, like I'm probably never going to ever feel that way again about a Bitcoin bottom. So, I don't know if you'll get that from us, Gareth, because it's kind of an echo chamber in here, and we're kind of down for the cause long term. So
yeah, and I understand that. I understand like the long term view. I guess it's more me looking for like what I would refer to as pikers, right? Like so in the stock market, it's like the little people that just like to they're just still like hanging on to this, and that's usually the ones that have to be broken, and then you finally get the bottom. But again, who knows? It's fun. It's what
if anything, what you could compare it to, like a scenario where I could see maybe you are correct, Gareth, is very similar to what we were doing when we were in that 6,000 range after the 2017 top in 2018, and then everybody said we were bottoming out, and then it was boom, 50% flash crash down to 3. That like hurt. That hurt me. So maybe we do that. Maybe we have like some more flash crash wipeout. But really, if you think about it, the thing that really gets most people out of the markets is just boring the hell out of them. It's not even losing money, because if you lose a lot of money really fast, it's actually still kind of exciting and your brain can't process it. But if we did get that boring consolidation, like I was showing you in that triangle pattern, let's say we just bounce around all the way until June, July, that may actually cause people to be like, because a lot of people still bought, above, even if we went back down to 17 or 18, a lot of people bought above those levels.
True.
So it could just be where, the time would have to play out to just bore the markets. That's a possibility.
What do you think? Is Gareth wrong and the bottom already happened? Will we see a different narrative next week? Let us know in the comments below. And also, if you want us to bring more Crypto Zombie content to the channel, his analysis is really good, so please check his YouTube channel. Thanks.